Jaguar did not just change a logo. That would have been easy. Jaguar did something much more dangerous. It looked at the people who already understood the brand, already bought the cars, already had the memory of what a Jaguar was supposed to mean, and basically said, I am going to need most of you to leave. And that is why this became a billion-dollar mistake. Now, before a lawyer gets excited in a conference room, I am not saying Jaguar has already booked a clean $1 billion accounting loss from one weird ad. That is not the claim. The claim is worse. Jaguar turned its rebrand into the public face of a multi-billion-pound bet. New cars, new prices, new customers, new identity, new everything. And then the first thing most people saw was not a car. It was a fashion fever dream with bright outfits, abstract slogans, and a logo that made half the internet ask the same question. Wait, is this still a car company? That is a very expensive question to create. One number shows how exposed the strategy became. ACEA recorded 1,961 new Jaguar registrations across the EU, EFTA, and UK in April 2024. 1 year later, 49. That is a 97.5% drop. That does not prove the rebrand drove buyers away. Jaguar was deliberately winding down outgoing models before replacements arrived. But it shows the size of the gap we need to explain. Because luxury brands do not sell metal first. They sell meaning. The leather, the engine, the badge, the showroom, all of that is meaning. And when you mess with meaning, you are not redesigning a business card. You are taking a loan against trust. Jaguar's old problem was real. This is the part people skip because outrage is easier than accounting. Jaguar was not sitting on top of the car world printing money. The brand had history. It had the E-Type aura, the old British villain energy, and the kind of charm that made flaws feel expensive. But charm does not fix a shrinking customer base. For years, Jaguar had been stuck between worlds. Not mass market, not dominant like Mercedes, not rare like Bentley, not fast enough in the electric transition to own the future. In business, that middle is where brands go to become wallpaper. So Jaguar's parent company, JLR, launched its Reimagine strategy. The official plan was big. Jaguar would be reimagined as an all-electric luxury brand. Not a mild refresh, not a new grille, a full repositioning. Then, in 2023, JLR announced £15 billion of investment over 5 years across factories, vehicle programs, autonomous technology, AI, digital systems, and people skills. That is the first reason the word billion belongs in this story. The ad was loud, but the risk was not just the ad. The risk was that Jaguar was trying to rebuild the brand while rebuilding the product pipeline underneath it. And then came the customer math. This is where the story gets sharp. Jaguar leadership reportedly expected only about 10 to 15% of existing customers to come along for the new version of the brand. 10 to 15%. That means the plan was not really keep the old audience and attract new buyers. The plan was closer to let the old room empty out, then hope a richer room walks in. That can work. Rarely. But when it fails with expensive taste. Because the new Jaguar was not aiming to be a slightly nicer version of the old one. Reports describe the next generation price point moving from around $60,000 to $120,000 or more. Double the money. Different customer. Different emotional promise. And that is why this was not just a marketing controversy. It was a business model wearing a new outfit. Jaguar wanted value over volume. Fewer cars, higher prices, more exclusivity. But there is a catch. If you ask for ultra-luxury money, the brand has to make people feel richer the second they see it. Not confused. Not defensive. Not like they need a 12-minute YouTube video and 3 LinkedIn posts to understand why the ad has no car in it. And then Jaguar launched the new identity. The company called it Copy Nothing. It talked about exuberant modernism. It showed new marks, new symbols, new colors, and a world that felt much closer to a fashion gallery than a garage. Strategically, I get the idea. Jaguar was trying to say, we are not chasing the past. We are not making nostalgia with batteries. We are building something strange, rare, artistic, and expensive. That is a real strategy. But execution matters. Because the first public impression did not say, this is the next great electric luxury car. For a lot of people it said, the car is missing. Associated Press reported the Rebrand video drew criticism for showing models in bright futuristic outfits and no car. The new logo became part of the argument. People were not debating horsepower, range, design, or whether Jaguar could challenge Porsche, Bentley, or Aston Martin. They were debating whether Jaguar had forgotten what Jaguar was. And that is deadly for a luxury brand. Because a normal brand can survive confusion if the price is cheap enough. Luxury cannot. Luxury needs instant recognition, instant desire, instant status. When someone sees a Ferrari, they do not need a PDF explaining the emotional architecture. They just know. That little "they just know" is worth billions. Jaguar spent decades building its version of that. The leaping cat, the long hood, the villain silhouette, British drama with leather seats. Was that enough to save the company? No, but it was still an asset. And one of the most expensive mistakes in branding is confusing old with worthless. Old can be stale. Old can also be equity. Focal Data's polling showed the danger. In its survey, 81% of respondents preferred Jaguar's older, "it's good to be bad" advert, and 83% preferred the existing logo over the radical redesign. That does not mean every respondent was the target buyer. But brand perception is not only about buyers, it is about the social room around the buyer. Rich people do not just buy what they like. They buy what other people recognize as expensive. That is the little dirty secret of status. If nobody understands the signal loses value. So when a luxury rebrand makes the broad public say, "I do not get it," the buyer hears something else. Will people get me? And now the car has a problem before the car even arrives. To be fair, Jaguar did get attention, and attention is not worthless. MarketWatch later reported that Jaguar said the rebrand boosted Google traffic from higher income people by 24%, more than doubled website traffic, and increased the share of surveyed people saying Jaguar was worth paying more for. That is the strongest defense of the campaign. Maybe the old audience was loud but not useful. Maybe the new audience was quiet, richer, and more interested. That is possible. But here is the problem. Attention is the cheapest luxury metric. Trust is the expensive one. You can buy attention with a bad commercial. Trust is what makes someone wire 6 figures for a car that does not need to exist. So the question is not, did people look? Of course they looked. The question is, did they want? That is the billion-dollar question. And the financial background makes it even more serious. JLR had a strong FY25. The company reported £29 billion in revenue and £2.5 billion in profit before tax and exceptional items. Then FY26 became much harder. JLR reported £22.9 billion in revenue, down 20.9% year over year, with adjusted EBIT at 0.7%. Now, very important, that decline was not the Jaguar ad did this. JLR pointed to multiple pressures: US tariffs, China market challenges, the planned wind-down of outgoing Jaguar models, production stoppages after a cyber incident, and increased variable marketing. That is the correct context. But the planned wind-down matters. Remember that 97.5% European registration drop? This is the context. Because Jaguar was not rebranding while the old product machine was happily printing cash in the background. It was rebranding while the old models were being wound down ahead of the new launch. That means the brand had to act like a bridge between the old cars leaving and the new cars not fully here yet. This is where Jaguar's mistake becomes clearer. The mistake was not being bold. Boring would not have saved Jaguar either. If Jaguar had released a gray ad with a gray car driving through gray rain while a British voice said, "Performance, refined," nobody would care. The brand needed a shock. The mistake was spending the shock before the proof. Jaguar asked people to accept a new identity before giving them enough new product to attach it to. It broke the emotional contract first, then promised the car would explain everything later. That is backwards. If you want to change what people believe, give them something undeniable first. A beautiful car, a brutal performance number, or a luxury experience that makes the old logo feel small. Jaguar changed the symbols first, so the symbols had to carry the entire bet. That is too much weight for a logo, especially when the logo is walking into a room full of people who still remember what the old badge meant. The Type 00 concept eventually gave the strategy a physical shape. Jaguar described it as the first physical manifestation of the new creative philosophy and the foundation stone for a new family of Jaguars. And whether you love it or hate it, at least now there was a car-shaped object in the conversation. But by then, for many people, the first impression had already been set. Jaguar changed. Jaguar confused me. Jaguar may not be for me anymore. And for a brand trying to move up market, that last sentence is both the strategy and the danger. Not for me anymore is fine when the person saying it was never going to pay $120,000. It is dangerous when the person saying it was part of the brand's credibility, because luxury does not only sell to customers. It sells through witnesses. That is why logos matter. That is why heritage matters. That is why a tiny badge on a hood can be worth more than the hood. Jaguar's old identity had problems, but it still carried memory. The rebrand tried to buy a new future by spending that memory quickly. Maybe it works. Maybe in a few years, the new Jaguar becomes a small, high-margin, electric luxury brand for design-obsessed rich people who think Porsche is too obvious and Bentley is too sofa-shaped. That is the winning version. But the losing version is ugly. The losing version is, old customers leave, new customers admire the art but buy something else, dealers lose confidence, and the company spends even more money explaining what should have felt obvious. That is why this rebrand belongs in the category of expensive corporate decisions. Not because one video burned $1 billion overnight, because the video revealed the size of the bet. Jaguar was not just changing how it looked, it was changing who it wanted, what it sold, what price it could ask for, and how much of its past it was willing to carry forward. And when you change all of that at once, the market does not grade you on creativity. It grades you on conversion. Do people understand it? Do they desire it? Do they pay more for it? Do they forgive what you abandoned? Every rebrand is a bet. Jaguar's was just unusually honest about it. The lesson is simple. A brand is not a logo. A brand is a pile of memories that somehow became money. Change the logo, and you touch the surface. Change the meaning, and you touch the vault. Jaguar may still prove the critics wrong. Bold moves look stupid right up until they look obvious. But if the new cars do not land, the rebrand will not be remembered as brave. It will be remembered as the moment Jaguar spent its inheritance before the new fortune arrived. And that, my friend, is how a car company turns a rebrand into $1 billion mistake.